So the Modern Warfare 3 beta has ended. Is it awful? Are they doing everything they can to make a god-awful game for another year? Well, here are my thoughts on what I think of the beta and my hopes going into the full release. So let's start off with some positive notes. The movement is what most people have been asking for. I've seen a few people complain on Twitter that it's a bit too fast, but that really is just a skill issue. Favela specifically really is transformed by the movement. It had me feeling like Ezio while I was diving from building to building. The game really feels like it encourages you to move around, which is such a positive for me, because I think this is the first time outside of Jetpack Call of Duties that this has been the case. Remember, the slide cancel in MW19 was always a bug that happened to create a skill gap. It's nice to see the devs leaning into this more. Obviously, I'm aware that this is a beta, but there is a very obvious meta and most of the other guns are kinda hot ass. The guns are fun to use though. Some of them could do with more recoil, and the SMGs are a bit strong at range, the Striker in particular, but that should be a really easy fix. Overall, I'm really happy with how the guns feel. It would be really interesting to see how the MW2 guns fit into all of this. If it's anything like the previous games, the new weapons will probably be much stronger overall, at least for the first season. A very welcome improvement to MW2. However, at least in the beta, it has been extremely inconsistent. Gunfights either end in 3 bullets or 30, without any obvious reason. We also need quick fix in the full game. Waiting around after 50-50 gunfights is not it, and it really kills the flow of gameplay. If the full release weapons are as good as the sniping feels in the beta, then it's going to be a really good year for snipers. Hit markers happen, but the guns feel smooth, and with new movement mechanics, they feel super mobile, giving me personally a lot of confidence at times to push more aggressively than I would have on MW2. I swear, I've seen more trick shots on my timeline in the last week than I have in the entirety of the last 2 years. Maybe we'll see a bit of resurgence to trick shot in this year? For a beta, and a COD one at that, I have had very little bugs, and they've all been in the menu, which, surprise surprise, the Hulu menu is a problem. The only thing I can really remember getting on my nerves was the update requires restart, and let's be honest, that's being extremely pedantic to complain about that during the beta. I personally have had 0 issues, but I have heard people complaining about packet loss issues, but that was an issue with the Vanguard beta too. Now, I did have an issue on MW2, I do have an issue on MW2, where my scoreboard is showing me a different latency to what my telemetry is at the top corner of my screen. But that seems to have been fixed with this, so, I mean, that's good. Surprise, surprise! It's very similar to MW2. Maybe like 10% worse though, which is surprising, seeing as the game is extremely similar visually to MW2. It's just got loads of clutter on the screen. I managed to improve it a little bit while messing around in the config file to get it a bit closer to the MW2's FPS. Hopefully the full game is better optimized for higher FPS because, I mean, the most recent CODs have not been it. I can't give a high score for maps as they're just MW2 2009 maps, and it's hard to be objective when every lobby is dripping with sweat. Also, high-res is not the map we remember. Spawns make sure of that. Having said that, the inclusion of doors to the maps is actually quite a welcome change for me. It adds something different to the maps I've played hundreds of times over the years. Ah, COD. There's always something broken, isn't there? This for me was by far the biggest issue with the beta. Having people spawn behind me more times than I care to think about. The only reason they got a 3 is that sometimes you can predict where the spawns are. But that's not to say it makes any sense. A few others have pointed out about old maps not working with the modern spawn system. For instance, spawning underground on high-res 90% of the time makes no sense when there are areas of the map much better suited to spawn. If the spawns aren't fixed on release, it could really spoil the game for a lot of people, myself included, and could be a deal breaker for a lot of people, especially long term. We have taken a step backwards with this one. For every good thing they do, there's always something bad to come along and attempt to ruin it all. Whereas in older titles, the SBMM seems to alter based on your whole play session, this time round, it seems like it's every game. One heater and you're in a lobby with a CDL team. I saw some other creators post clips from accounts that had been reverse boosted and the standards were mind-blowing. Playing against people with 0 brain activity. The SBMM being as it is really concerns me, as we'll most likely return to people reverse boosting to get good lobbies. As much as I'm happy that people are willing to push back against the idea of SBMM, this will create an unrealistic content standard for a lot of people who just want to play the game. Well, it certainly isn't the COD a lot of us remember, but it's probably the closest we've gotten in a long time, plus modern movement. There were some interesting additions to the maps, as previously mentioned, but generally they're still MW2 maps with a modern twist. So the nostalgia is definitely there, while allowing for things to be different enough to feel fresh. So, ultimately, is it worth your money? If you like COD titles, then yes, definitely. It's not the copy and paste that a lot of people are claiming. The original MW3 was called a copy and paste too, and turned out to be one of the best titles for a lot of people. Hopefully this game has a similar run. Sledgehammer really have shown us that there is hope for Call of Duty with this beta. Let's see if they can deliver when the full game drops in November.